Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show, checking the pulse of Husker Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. It's finally the appropriate time. I've seen several tweets, several posts. People have commented, texted to me several times throughout this year, like, Nebraska could be in the Big Ten West conversation, Adam. And I'm just like, it's just not time yet. I feel like it's the appropriate time, or close enough, okay, to talk about the legitimacy of Nebraska making a run in the Big Ten West. Yes, the wide open, not so great division that is the Big Ten Western Division in college football. Now, real quick, before I dive into that, I got a whole bunch of thoughts, a whole bunch of things that I hope you folks find interesting. I want to talk about the young talent on offense and things of that nature. Then I'm going to look at the rest of our schedule. Then I'm going to look at the four-way tie, the other three teams, talk about them just a smidge. Let's have a little bit of fun, light this candle, and do it here on the People's Show. Now, right off the top, Matt Rhule had a great quote following the game against Purdue on Saturday. All right, Coach Matt Rhule on winning 3 straight. Now, real quick, Nebraska has won 3 games in a row for the first time since 2016. Okay, now Matt Rhule on winning 3 straight and producing the first unbeaten October at Nebraska since 2001. His response was this, and I quote, "None of that means anything when I wake up tomorrow," end quote. That was Matt Rhule. If you love that attitude and that mentality as much as I do, then hit that like button. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's a 4-way tie atop the Big Ten West for first place. Nebraska's 3-2 in the division, Wisconsin 3-2, Iowa 3-2, Minnesota's 3-2. Now, before I get into all that, here's a few things you might find interesting. All right, Colorado. I've been keeping my eye on him all year. I've said all offseason and all year I'm going to keep my eye on him. Why? Because of Coach Prime. I was a fan of his growing up. He's highly entertaining. Colorado's nowhere near as good as they thought they were, but they're still intriguing for me to watch. Also, they like to take shots at Nebraska. So, this one's for them. Since Colorado beat Nebraska, all right, but since that game, the Huskers have won 4 of 5. While the Buffaloes have lost 4 out of 6 since then. Now, Heinrich Haarberg is 5-1 as a starting quarterback at Nebraska. An argument could be made, had he started versus Minnesota, maybe we win that game as well. And also the first half of that Colorado game, if you go back and remember how that half went, I'm not going to go into details, but if he starts that game, maybe the first half of that game versus Colorado goes differently, which could drastically, positively impact and affect differently how the second half of that game goes as well. But I digress. I thought John M. Bishop had an interesting tweet on Twitter. Here it is, and I quote, "Not only have the Huskers won 3 games for the first time in 2,562 days, they also won all 3 with a negative turnover margin. This hasn't been done since the last 2 games of 2000 and the first game of 2001. My records go back to 95, and it hasn't happened inside the same year since then," end the quote of that tweet. I just thought that was interesting. Just take care of the ball, please. Oh, how good could we be if we just held on to the ball a little better? But, all right, I digress. All right, it should be noted that offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield called Saturday's game versus Purdue from the press box for the first time this season. All right. Most offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, head coaches are on the field during the game. Every once in a while, you'll run into somebody who prefers to be in the press box. Maybe this is something we see going forward. I don't know. And I couldn't remember exactly who said this. I just jotted this down real quick before I started to record this show. By the way, I'm recording this on a Sunday. The last time I recorded a show on a Sunday, which was last week, I talked about how I thought the Huskers were in a really good spot in the season. The next day, Matt Rhule comes out and he announces 4 million injuries. So it kind of killed my thoughts, but maybe not so much as we sit here, right now. But just so you know, I'm recording this on a Sunday. This video will go out shortly. All right, now I believe it was an NFL scout that said this. I just kind of jotted this down right before I started recording this show. He said, okay, the person who said this, the 2 teams that practice the hardest in the country are Nebraska and Georgia. My thoughts, it's about time we hear something like that when it comes to Nebraska football again. All right, I'm going to talk about the Big Ten West. I'm going to talk about our remaining schedule, okay, and the remaining teams that we're competing with, all right, in the Big Ten West for that Big Ten West crown as well here right after this. Now, real quick, as always, I want to give a shout out to DPS Concrete Construction. They're a great sponsor, phenomenal partner. If you can partner with them, I highly recommend doing it. All right, if you're a general contractor, building owner, or property manager looking for concrete repair or work done in the Omaha metro area, such as street paving, building floors, and parking lots, check out dpsconstruction.net. Again, that's dpsconstruction.net. Now, knock on wood, I'm not a superstitious guy. I had these socks in high school. They had all sorts of holes in them. I wore them every football game my senior year, every soccer game. I didn't play soccer. That's a joke. Basketball game my senior year, and I tried to do it in baseball, but by then I was getting blisters. That's the only time I've ever been superstitious in my life was those socks. And I really wasn't superstitious. I don't know, I kind of liked them. Despite all the holes. The only superstition I have is I will knock on wood, and yes, this is real wood, ladies and gentlemen. Making a bowl game seems likely, knock on wood. All right, it seems like the appropriate time to kind of look at the Big Ten West race. All right, as I mentioned, four-way tie, Nebraska, Wisconsin, all right, Minnesota, and Iowa. Now, the Huskers play Wisconsin and Iowa. Minnesota, okay, who holds the tiebreaker over us, all right, plays Ohio State. That's the game that sticks out the most to me out of the other three teams that we're competing with, the game that sticks out the most to me that any of those three teams have left to play. Now, you never know with college football, but the Gophers, I mean, let's be real. I'd be shocked if Minnesota beat Ohio State. Okay, so I'm just going to say, I believe the Huskers will ultimately control their own destiny in the Big Ten West. Nothing's guaranteed, but I'm just going to go out on a small limb and say that the Minnesota may not beat Ohio State, which allows Nebraska to control their own destiny in the Big Ten West. Now, our last four games are against Michigan State. Michigan State has lost their last 6 games. I was like gobsmacked when I saw that. All right, Maryland, who I thought pretty highly of at one point this year. I thought their defense was at least improved. They'd added size in their front seven through the transfer portal. You got a Tagovailoa at quarterback. You got some athletes at wide receiver. But man, since they have played Ohio State and they lost that game by 20 points, they have just not looked the same at all. In fact, they just lost to Northwestern. What? Anyways, I love college football. 33-27, they lost that game. And again, they just haven't looked the same for the past 3 or 4 weeks. Wisconsin has lost 2 of their last 3 games, okay? I mean, I tell you what, the Big Ten West is just a juggernaut, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, I digress. Better enjoy our last year in it, just like I hope everyone's enjoying the last year of the Pac-12, because it's actually a great conference to watch as well. All right, Wisconsin has lost 2 of their last 3 games. Transfer SMU quarterback, who was their starter, Tanner Mordecai, and he wasn't setting the world on fire, but he was the best option they had at the time, had a pin surgically placed in his hand. Now he's out for the foreseeable future, okay, and they are just not the same without him starting a quarterback for him. Now you look at Iowa. They stink, but I'll give them credit. Somehow they find ways to win games, but at the end of the day, it's going to catch up to you. All right, so here's what I wrote. I wrote, they stink, and they are their own worst enemy, with Daddy Ferentz playing D1 daddy ball with baby Ferentz. I got 84 kids and 9,000 sports, and I see daddy and mommy ball all the time. I never thought I'd see it at the D1 level. I mean, we just are. And it's hurting Iowa. Iowa could actually be a really good program. I'm sorry, a really good team. They're good. They're a solid program, okay? They could be a really good team if they just had an average offense. Average. They have really good defense, really good special teams. They're really disciplined. Okay, since 2017, since Baby Ferentz became their offensive coordinator, no team in the country has scored more defensive touchdowns than Iowa. Imagine if they scored offensive touchdowns. Okay, they are dead last in the country, Power 5 teams or not, when it comes to total offense. All right, now after our first 6 games, we had the bye week, and I kind of looked at the last 6 games. I did like middle of the year report card, something like that. And I kind of focused on the next 3 games at that point in time, which was Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State. I said, I feel like they're all 3 winnable. Now, here's the deal. After 8 games, I'm looking at the last 4 games. Okay. To take it one game at a time. I mean, I said this after the injuries, because I did a reaction video to all the injuries a week ago. Again, wish those guys speedy recovery. And Nebraska had. I said, take it one game at a time. I'm going to stick with that. And if I was a player and a coach, this would be asinine for me to do. But I'm not a player and a coach. This is my show, and I can have fun the way I see fit as long as the people are on board. So take it one game at a time. That attitude has not changed. But I just laid out how all 4 of those games are very, very winnable. And in my opinion, Nebraska, if you watch everyone in the Big Ten West, if we just take care of the ball, Stop giving it away like a bad Christmas present on Christmas morning all the time. Okay, let's be a little bit more like the Grinch and let's keep these things to ourselves. All right, talking about the football. We might be playing the best ball of anybody in the Big Ten West over the past 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, let's take it one game at a time, and I truly believe this is going to be a fun ride. Now, unfortunately, Nebraska's had a ton of injuries, but I posted, I think, on social media or YouTube or somewhere, I said, could Nebraska actually be more explosive on offense? Okay, maybe better by the end of the year after these guys have gotten some reps and some time and some experience on the field, because an infusion of younger, inexperienced, which is why it could take some time, but more talented guys, could we actually be better a month from now than we otherwise would have been because they're younger, a little bit more talented, a little bit more explosive? Now, last Saturday versus Purdue, we only had 4 day one starters that started that day and only 2 upperclassmen. Okay, so give it some time. But left tackle, Teddy Prohaska, for example, I could argue he's an upgrade at left tackle as long as he stays healthy. Left guard and backup center, freshman. It's not very often you see a freshman lineman responsible for starting and being a backup of 2 positions, whether it's left tackle or guard. Left tackle's got to play with a lot more space. Guards can play in a phone booth more. But when you're talking about a guy being a starting guard and backup center, you ain't got to be the most stout guy on planet Earth to be a center, but you got to be really smart. You got to call out the new mic. You got to call out the blitzes, make any adjustments at the line of scrimmage. You are the leader of the offensive line, and that's a freshman. And he's starting to left guard. So he's a guy to be excited about. Right guard, Henry Letufsky. He's a sophomore. I've had my eye on him actually for a couple of years. Okay, starting with the fact that I know he's very strong in the weight room. So these are guys to keep your eye on up front. Now, wide receivers. I mentioned them before, but freshman Jalen Lloyd has a 73-yard touchdown catch, the option pass on Saturday. Okay, I think it was the longest reception of the season and one of the top 3 longest plays of the year for the Huskers. And freshman Malachi Coleman, we all know he's young, talented, great speed. Young guys, freshmen, fast. Could we maybe be better a month from now with these younger guys? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. All right, there's going to be some ugly football in the meantime and some exciting football. Minnesota has the head-to-head over Nebraska, but they have that game versus Ohio State, and the Huskers are playing the best football as long as we hold on to the ball of anyone in the Big Ten West. I think as a result, the West runs through Lincoln. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think Marcus Satterfield should call more games from the press box? Will volleyball and Big Ten, Nebraska volleyball and football be playing for Big Ten titles this year? And how many games does Nebraska win out of their last 4? Go Big Red Nose. Remember to throw the ball.